This will be mini-series of employee stories who worked at gas station at Route 66. I will tell them until workers run out of stories or until they mysteriously disappear. Enjoy. Route 66 stretches out like a scar across the landscape, cutting through forgotten towns and whispers of old Americana. But this stretch? It's different. I've heard the stories. Everyone who works the night shift has. Tales passed down from one poor soul to the next, about the customers who roll in after midnight, the ones who don't quite fit into the world we know. They say Jack used to run a place like this further down the road, dealing with the same shadows that creep in when the sun dips low. His accounts kept me up at night back when I was just a kid browsing forums. But now I'm living it, or surviving it, I guess. My name's not important. Call me the guy behind the counter if you want. I took this job because rent doesn't pay itself, and the day shift was full. The manager, an old-timer with eyes like dried-up wells, handed me a crumpled list on my first night. "Follow these rules," he said, his voice gravelly from too many smokes. "Or don't. Your choice." He didn't smile, didn't explain. Just locked up and left me alone with the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant howl of coyotes that sounded a little too human. Rule 1. Don't look them in the eyes if they come in pairs. I didn't get it at first. The station's a relic, pumps rusted at the edges, the store stocked with dusty candy bars and warm sodas. The bathroom's out back, key on a chain that feels heavier than it should. Midnight hit and the first car pulled up. A beat-up sedan with plates I couldn't place. 2 figures stepped out, tall and thin, like stretched shadows. They moved in sync, steps matching perfectly, and when they pushed through the door, the bell jingled like a warning. I kept my head down, pretending to count change. They browsed the aisles, picking up chips and energy drinks, but their hands, God, their hands were wrong. Fingers too long, knuckles bulging like they'd been broken and reset badly. One of them leaned over the counter, breath hot and foul, like roadkill baking in the sun. "Pump 3, he rasped, voice echoing slightly, as if coming from 2 throats at once. I nodded, eyes on the register. But curiosity got me. I glanced up just to peek. Their eyes were black pits swirling with something alive, like oil mixed with wriggling maggots. I froze, and in that moment I saw it, flashes of things that shouldn't be. A family picnic turned slaughter. Bodies twisted in the grass, smiles frozen in agony. The other one grinned, teeth sharpened to points, and whispered, "You looked." They paid in crumpled bills that felt slick, like skin, and left. But as they drove off, I swear the car shimmered like it wasn't fully there. That was just the warm-up. Rule 2. If the radio static turns to voices, turn it off immediately. Don't listen. Around 1 a.m., the old AM/FM behind the counter crackled to life on its own. I was mopping up a spill, some sticky red liquid that looked too much like blood but smelled like cherry syrup, when the static hissed into words. "Help. Us," it whispered, faint at first, then clearer. "They're coming. For you, too." I lunged for the knob, but my hand slipped and the voices grew. They weren't just pleading. They described things. He screamed as they peeled his face off, layer by layer, eyes bulging like grapes ready to pop. Graphic, vivid like a memory being forced into my head. I saw it in my mind. A man, maybe the last clerk, strapped to a chair in the back room, skin flayed in strips that hung like wet ribbons. Blood pooling, mixing with tears. The voices laughed then, a chorus of agony. I yanked the plug, heart pounding, but the echoes lingered in my ears. By 2 a.m., the isolation hit hard. Route 66 is empty this far out, no trucks, no tourists. Just the wind whipping sand against the windows like tiny claws scratching to get in. That's when she came. Rule 3. The woman in the white dress, offer her coffee, black, no sugar, don't ask questions. She glided in, barefoot, dress stained with what looked like rust at the hem. Pale skin, almost translucent, veins pulsing blue beneath. Her hair hung in wet strands, as if she'd just crawled from a river. "Coffee," she said, voice soft but commanding. I poured it quick, hands shaking, the steam rising like ghosts. She took the cup, sipped, and stared out the window. That's when I noticed the smell. Decay, sweet and rotten like flowers left too long in a vase. She turned to me, lips curling into a smile that split too wide, revealing gums blackened and receding. "You know Jack's stories, don't you?" she murmured. My blood ran cold. How did she know? He tried to warn them. "The rules are older than the road. They bind us here." She set the cup down, and as she did, her hand brushed mine, cold, clammy, like touching a corpse pulled from the morgue. Then she leaned in, whispering details that matched those old tales. Customers with faces that melted under the lights. Rules about not opening the cooler after 3 a.m. because something inside banged and pleaded. But she added more, graphic horrors Jack never shared publicly. One night, a man ignored the rule about the mirror in the bathroom. He looked too long, and his reflection stepped out, fingernails digging into his throat, tearing it open in a spray of arterial red. He gurgled, clutching the wound as blood flooded his lungs, drowning him from the inside while his double watched, smiling with his own face. I pulled away, but she grabbed my wrist, nails sinking in like hooks. Skin broke, warm blood trickling down my arm in rivulets that stung like acid. "You're linked now," she said. "The road remembers." She released me and left, vanishing into the night without a car. The coffee cup remained, but when I touched it, it crumbled to dust, leaving a stain that looked like a handprint burned into the counter. The rules kept coming back to me as the night dragged on. Rule 4. If you hear scratching at the back door, ignore it. Feed nothing. Around 3 a.m. it started, soft at first like branches in the wind, then insistent, nails on metal. I busied myself stocking cigarettes, but the sound grew, accompanied by whimpers like a dog in pain. Or a child. "Please, hungry," a voice whined from outside. I peeked through the window, against better judgment. In the dim light of the security lamp, something crouched. Humanoid but twisted, limbs elongated, skin hanging loose like an ill-fitting suit. Its face was a mess of sores and pus-filled boils, eyes milky white. It clawed at the door, fingers bleeding, nails splintered and embedded in the wood. "Just a bite," it begged, tongue lolling out, black and swollen. I backed away, but it slammed against the door, the frame shaking. Visions hit me again, linked to those old stories perhaps. Jack had mentioned strays that weren't strays, things that lured you out and feasted. This one, though, I could imagine the details he left out. Once you opened the door, it would pounce, teeth sinking into your calf, tearing muscle from bone in wet chunks. You'd feel the tendons snap, hot pain shooting up your leg as it chewed, swallowing flesh while you screamed, blood soaking the gravel. I turned up the radio, static only now, and waited it out. The scratching faded by 4 a.m., but the door bore fresh gouges, deep and ragged. Dawn was still hours away, and the customers kept coming. A trucker with a face full of scars, buying lotto tickets, muttering about the ones who watch from the dunes. He paid with coins that felt warm, like they'd been clutched in a fevered hand. As he left, he warned, "Follow the rules, kid, or you'll end up like the others, pieces scattered along the shoulder, eyes pecked out by crows, guts strung like garlands." I thought of Jack again, how his stories ended with him barely escaping but always hinting at more. This place felt like an extension, the rules evolving, the horrors deepening. By 5 a.m., exhaustion set in, but sleep wasn't an option. Rule 5, don't fall asleep. Ever. They come in your dreams first. As the sky hinted at gray, I realized this was just the beginning. The night shift on Route 66 doesn't let you go. It hooks you, pulls you in with its secrets and blood-soaked tales. And tomorrow? Part 2 waits with customers even less normal, rules that twist tighter. But for now, I'm still here, watching the horizon, praying for light that never fully chases the dark away. The neon sign buzzed overhead, its red glow flickering like a dying pulse against the endless Route 66 night. My second shift at Last Chance Gas started, where the first left off. Heart still pounding from last night's horrors. The rules burned into my mind like a brand. The gouges on the back door were still there, deep and splintered, and the counter still bore that burned handprint from the woman in the white dress. I kept my eyes off it, afraid it might move if I stared too long. The air felt heavier tonight, thick with the scent of dust and something sour, like milk gone bad. The rules sat crumpled in my pocket, a lifeline I clung to as the clock ticked past midnight. Rule 6. If the lights flicker 3 times in a row, lock the door and hide under the counter until they stop. I didn't understand why until 12:47 a.m. The fluorescence buzzed, then blinked, once, twice, 3 times. My stomach dropped. I scrambled to the door, fumbling with the deadbolt, and dove under the counter, wedging myself between a box of stale chips and a stack of receipts. The lights kept flickering, and through the gap beneath the counter I saw shadows moving outside, long, distorted shapes that didn't match anything human. They pressed against the glass, smearing it with something dark and viscous that dripped like tar. A low hum filled the air, not mechanical, but alive, like a swarm of bees trapped in a skull. I held my breath, the rules echoing in my head. Jack's stories mentioned something like this: shadows that came when the lights failed, things that hunted for anyone foolish enough to stay visible. He never said what they did if they caught you, but my mind filled in the blanks. Skin torn like wet paper, bones snapped and ground to dust, eyes gouged out and left to roll in the dirt. The shadows lingered, their shapes shifting, now a claw, now a gaping maw, before the light steadied and they melted back into the night. I crawled out, legs shaking, and wiped the glass clean. The smear left a stain, dark and greasy, that wouldn't come off. By 1:30 a.m. the station was quiet again, but the silence was worse. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for the next rule to break me. Rule 7. If a customer asks for the special, give them the blue key from the drawer and don't follow them to the bathroom. A guy came in just after, wiry and pale, with a grin that showed too many teeth. His clothes were stained, brown and crusted, like he'd been digging in a graveyard. "Got the special?" he asked, voice low and wet, like he was gargling something thick. I slid the blue key across the counter, avoiding his fingers, which were caked with dirt and something red. He snatched it and shuffled to the bathroom out back, the chain rattling as he went. The rules didn't say what the special was, but Jack's old posts hinted at it. A locked door in the bathroom that didn't lead to pipes or storage. I heard the key turn, then a sound like meat being ripped apart, wet and heavy, followed by a scream that cut off too fast. My hands shook as I restocked the energy drinks, trying not to imagine the details. A body torn open, ribs cracked like twigs, intestines spilling out like ropes of sausage, blood pooling so thick it reflected the moonlight. The guy never came back. The key was on the counter when I checked later, slick with a film that smelled of copper and rot. I washed my hands until they were raw, but the smell clung, burrowing into my skin. At 2 a.m., Rule 8 kicked in. Don't touch the cigarettes in the red pack on the top shelf. A woman came in, her face hidden under a hood, hands trembling as she pointed to the pack. "Those," she said, voice sharp like broken glass. I shook my head, mumbling something about them being out of stock. Her hood slipped back, revealing a face that wasn't right, skin sagging like melted wax, one eye dangling from its socket, held by a thin thread of tissue. She hissed, breath reeking of decay, and lunged for the pack. I grabbed her wrist, breaking the rule without thinking. Her skin sloughed off under my grip, peeling away in wet strips that stuck to my fingers. She screamed, a sound that tore through my skull, and her eye popped free, rolling across the counter, leaving a trail of yellow pus. "You shouldn't have," she whispered, then staggered out, clutching her face, blood and flesh dripping between her fingers. I burned the red pack in the sink, the smoke curling into shapes that looked like faces, mouths open in silent screams. Jack had warned about cursed items, things that carried pieces of the road's hunger. I didn't sleep after that. Couldn't shake the image of her flesh clinging to me, warm and slippery, like I dipped my hand in a bucket of raw meat. By 3 a.m. the station felt alive, the walls creaking, the floor sticky with something I couldn't identify. Rule 9. If you see a child outside, don't let them in. They're not lost. A small figure appeared in the parking lot, maybe 8 years old, standing under the pump lights, barefoot in a torn dress, her hair matted with dirt. She knocked on the glass, tiny knuckles leaving bloody smears. "I'm cold," she whimpered, voice muffled but clear. Her eyes were wrong, too big, too dark, like twin voids swallowing the light. Turned away, heart racing. But her knocking grew louder, faster, until the glass rattled in its frame. "Let me in!" she screamed, voice splitting into a chorus of growls. I saw flashes again, linked to Jack's tales. A kid who wasn't a kid, luring a clerk outside, then tearing into him with teeth like needles, ripping through his stomach, pulling out loops of gut while he was still alive. His screams drowned by the crunch of bones. I stayed put, gripping the counter until my knuckles whitened. She vanished at 3:30, leaving only a pile of bloody fingernails by the door. The final hour brought Rule 10. If the phone rings after 4 a.m., don't answer. It rang at 4:02. The sound was shrill, cutting through the hum of the coolers. I ignored it, but a voice came through anyway, crackling through the speaker. "You can't hide," it said, layered, like multiple people speaking at once. "We see you." The line hissed, and I heard wet, tearing sounds like flesh being pulled apart, followed by a gurgling laugh. "You're next," it promised, then went silent. I checked the cameras, but the lot was empty. Still, I felt watched, eyes boring into me from the dark beyond the pumps. Jack's stories ended with him escaping, but he never said how many nights he lasted. I'm starting to think he didn't make it far. The rules are a chain, each one linking me tighter to this place, to the horrors that roll in with the dust and the night. The woman in the white dress was right. The road remembers. It knows my name now, my fear, my blood. As dawn crept closer, gray light barely touching the horizon, a final customer pulled up. No car, just a man standing at pump 6, motionless. He was tall, too tall, his face obscured by a hat. Rule 11, don't speak to the man at pump 6. I didn't, but as he turned to leave, his head tilted and I saw his face, or where it should have been. Just a smooth, featureless expanse of skin, stretching tight over bone. He raised a hand, fingers curling like they were beckoning me, and walked into the desert, swallowed by the dark. The shift ended, but the station didn't let go. I'm back tomorrow, tied to the rules, to the road, to the things that come when the world sleeps. Part 3 looms, and I know the customers will be worse, the rules stricter, the horrors more vivid. I can still feel the woman's flesh on my hands, hear the child's growls, see the faceless man's wave. Route 66 doesn't just take your shift, it takes you piece by bloody piece. The desert night clung to last chance gas like a shroud, the neon sign spitting sparks now, its red glow pulsing irregularly, as if the station itself were breathing. My third night shift on Route 66 started with a knot in my gut, the rules heavier in my pocket, their edges worn from my nervous fingers. The gouges on the back door were deeper, fresh splinters curling outward, and the burned handprint on the counter seemed darker, its fingers stretched longer, like it was reaching for me. The air was thick with that sour rot smell, now mixed with something metallic like blood left to rust. Jack's stories haunted me, his warnings about this stretch of road, about things that came after midnight, things that knew you by name. I was starting to believe he didn't escape, that the road ate him whole, and now it was hungry for me. Rule 12. If the cooler hums a tune, open it and throw in a raw steak from the drawer under the register. Don't look inside. At 12:15 a.m., the cooler in the back started humming. Not its usual drone, but a melody, slow and eerie, like a lullaby sung by a throat full of gravel. I fumbled under the register, finding a plastic-wrapped steak cold and slimy, its juices seeping through the wrap like it was still bleeding. I approached the cooler, the tune growing louder, notes twisting into a wail. The door was fogged, but shadows moved inside, pressing against the glass, fingers or something like them, scratching at the edges. I yanked the door open, eyes fixed on the floor, and tossed the steak in. Something snatched it mid-air, a wet snap echoing, followed by chewing, loud and sloppy, like a dog tearing into gristle. The smell hit me, rotting meat, bile, and something sweet like overripe fruit. I slammed the door shut, the hum stopping instantly, but not before I caught a glimpse of something inside. A hand, gray and bloated, nails black and curling, clutching the stake as blood pooled on the cooler floor. Jack's posts mentioned a cooler that ate offerings, but he never described the sound of flesh being shredded, the crunch of cartilage, the squelch of juices as something fed. I backed away, heart hammering, and didn't open the cooler again. By 1 a.m., the station felt smaller, walls creaking like they were closing in. Rule 13. If a customer pays with a coin that's warm to the touch, drop it in the jar behind the counter without looking at it. A man shuffled in, his face hidden under a baseball cap, hands trembling as he slid a single coin across the counter for a pack of gum. It was warm, unnaturally so, like it had been pressed against fevered skin. I grabbed it, avoiding his gaze, and dropped it into the jar, where it landed with a clink that echoed too long. He muttered something, gibberish, or maybe a language I didn't know, and left, his shadow stretching across the lot, too long for his body. Made the mistake of glancing at the jar later. The coin wasn't a coin anymore. It was round, yes, but fleshy, pulsing faintly, with veins spiderwebbing across its surface. It twitched, and I swear it whispered my name, low and guttural like it knew me. Jack had written about cursed payments, things that carried pieces of their owners, souls, or worse. I imagined the man's hand, skin peeling back as he pressed the coin into his palm, blood and muscle fusing with it, a piece of him left behind to watch me. I shoved the jar under the counter, out of sight, but I could still hear it, a faint heartbeat pulsing through the glass. At 2:30 a.m., Rule 14 hit. If you smell burning hair, light a match and hold it until it burns your fingers. Don't blow it out. The smell came suddenly, sharp and acrid, curling into my nostrils like smoke from a funeral pyre. I grabbed a matchbook from the display, struck one, and held it, the flame licking closer to my skin. The air grew heavy and whispers started, soft, overlapping, like a crowd murmuring just out of sight. He burned, one said. Skin blackened, eyes melted, dripping down his cheeks like wax. The images came unbidden. A man, maybe Jack, screaming as flames ate his flesh, blisters bursting, fat sizzling as it ran down his arms in rivulets. The match scorched my fingers, pain grounding me, and I dropped it, letting it burn out on the floor. The whispers stopped, but the smell lingered, and my fingertips were red, blistered, the skin peeling back in thin curls. The night dragged on, each rule tightening the noose. At 3 a.m., Rule 15. If you hear footsteps circling the station, don't look outside. They're not human. The sound started faint, a shuffle of boots on gravel, then grew, circling faster like a predator pacing its prey. I kept my eyes on the counter, counting scratches in the wood, but the footsteps weren't alone. Low growls mixed in, wet and throaty, and something dragged like a heavy sack or a body being pulled through the dirt. Jack's stories mentioned walkers, things that hunted clerks who got too curious. He didn't say what they did, but my mind painted it. Claws sinking into your scalp, ripping it free in one pull, blood gushing as they tore into your chest, cracking ribs like dry branches, pulling out your heart while it still beat. I gripped the counter, nails digging into the wood, and waited. The footsteps stopped at 3:45, but a new sound replaced them. A tapping, slow and deliberate, on the window behind me. I didn't turn. I couldn't. But in the reflection of the glass door, I saw it. A figure too tall, head tilted at an impossible angle, its mouth a jagged tear, teeth glinting like broken glass. It tapped again, and the glass cracked, a spiderweb spreading from the point of impact. Then it was gone, leaving only the shattered pane and a smear of something black and oily, dripping like blood. By 4 a.m., Rule 16. If the clock stops, leave the station immediately and don't look back. The old analog clock above the door froze at 4:03. Its ticking, a constant I hadn't even noticed, went silent. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys, the rules screaming in my head. I bolted for the door, heart pounding, and ran into the lot, the desert air cold and sharp. I didn't look back, but I heard it, a laugh deep and hollow coming from inside the station. It followed me, echoing across the empty road, and with it came flashes of Jack's fate. His body sprawled in the dirt, throat torn open, blood soaking the sand, his eyes wide and empty as something crouched over him, gnawing on his spine. I stopped at the edge of the lot, panting, the station looming behind me. The rules didn't say what happened if you left, but I couldn't stay. I walked a mile down Route 66, the dark pressing in, until the sky started to lighten. When I finally turned, the station looked normal. Too normal, like it was waiting for me to come back. I'm back tonight, bound by the rules, by the road, by the things that know my name. The customers will be worse, their faces less human, their demands bloodier. The station's alive, feeding on fear, on flesh, on the stories Jack left behind. Part 4 waits, and I know it'll dig deeper, cut closer, until there's nothing left of me but another tale for the next fool who takes the night shift. The desert night was a living thing, wrapping last chance gas in a chokehold of silence and dread. The neon sign was half dead now, one side dark, the other spitting red light like arterial spray. My fourth night shift on Route 66 felt like stepping into a trap I'd already sprung. The rules in my pocket less a guide and more a sentence. The handprint on the counter had spread, its fingers now curling toward the edge, as if clawing for me. The air reeked of rust and decay, thicker tonight, like the station was exhaling something foul. Jack's stories, those fragmented warnings from a man who probably didn't make it, felt closer, like he was whispering from the walls. I wondered if he'd stood here, same as me, watching the dark for what came next. Rule 17. If the vending machine outside rattles, put $1 in and walk away. Don't take what comes out. At 12:30 a.m., the machine by the pumps started shaking, a violent clatter like bones rattling in a tin can. I grabbed a crumpled dollar from the register, my hands slick with sweat, and approached it. The machine's lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the lot. I slid the bill in, the slot sucking it up like a hungry mouth, and stepped back fast. Something thudded inside, heavy, wet, hitting the dispenser tray with a squelch. I didn't look, but the smell hit me. Raw, coppery, like fresh slaughter. Jack had mentioned a machine that gave back wrong things, but not what. My mind filled the gap, a chunk of flesh still warm, veins pulsing, maybe an eye staring up, lidless and wet, rolling in its own blood. I kept walking back to the counter, the sound of dripping following me until it stopped. By 1 a.m., the station felt like it was watching, the walls groaning softly, like old bones settling. Rule 18. If a customer asks for directions, point to the map on the wall and say nothing. A woman came in, her face gaunt, lips cracked and bleeding. She wore a coat too big for her, stained with something dark and crusted. "Where's the turnoff?" she asked, her voice a rasp, like she'd screamed herself raw. I pointed to the faded Route 66 map behind the counter, my mouth dry. Her eyes narrowed and she leaned closer, breath hot and sour. "You don't know what's out there," she said, her lips splitting further, blood trickling down her chin. They wait at the crossroads, peeling skin from bones, stringing it up like Christmas lights. I saw it in my head. Bodies hung along the road, flesh stretched taut, faces frozen in screams, eyes plucked out and left in piles like discarded marbles. She laughed, a wet gurgle, and left, her coat dragging across the floor, leaving a trail of red smears. I mopped it up, but the stains wouldn't lift, soaking into the tiles like they belonged there. At 2 a.m., Rule 19. If the mirror in the bathroom reflects someone else, break it and burn the pieces. I'd avoided the bathroom since the woman in the white dress, but a customer, a trucker with hands like raw meat, demanded the key. I handed it over, the chain heavy, and he didn't come back. At 2:30, I had to check. The bathroom was dim, the single bulb flickering. I glanced at the cracked mirror above the sink, and my reflection wasn't mine. It was a man, maybe Jack. His face half gone, one cheek torn open to show teeth and bone, blood dripping down his jaw. He grinned, and my real hand trembled as I grabbed the tire iron from under the counter. I smashed the mirror, shards flying, some slicing my arms, blood welling in thin lines. The reflection laughed, even as it shattered, the sound echoing in my skull. I gathered the pieces in a trash can, doused them with lighter fluid, and lit a match. The flames roared and the glass screamed, high, human, like a child burning alive. The smell was worse than burning hair, skin, fat, and something sweeter, like rotting fruit. Jack's stories hinted at mirrors that trapped things, but not how they bled when broken, how the shards writhed in the fire, curling like living things. By 3 a.m., the station was a pressure cooker, every creak and hum a threat. Rule 20. If you hear singing from the pumps, cover your ears and hum a different tune. It started soft, a melody drifting from the lot, sweet but wrong like a hymn sung backward. I pressed my hands to my ears, humming an old pop song, anything to drown it out. But the singing crept in, voices layering, men, women, children all wailing. Images flooded me, bodies sprawled across the pumps, throats slit, blood pooling in the gravel, their mouths still moving, singing through gaping wounds. Jack had written about sounds that lured you out, but not how they painted pictures. Flesh torn open, organs spilling like wet laundry, hands clawing at the ground as the singers fed on their own screams. I hummed louder, voice cracking, until the singing stopped at 3:45. My ears rang and blood trickled from my nose, warm and sticky. I wiped it away, but it left a streak on my hand, too red, too alive. At 4 a.m., Rule 21. If a car pulls up with no driver, don't go near it. A black sedan rolled into the lot, headlights off, engine silent. No one was behind the wheel. It sat at pump 4, doors closed, windows tinted so dark they swallowed the light. I stayed inside, gripping the counter, but the car's horn blared, once, twice, 3 times, each blast shaking the windows. The air grew cold and my breath fogged, even though it was summer. Jack's tales mentioned ghost cars, but not the details my mind conjured. Opening the door to find a pile of flesh, limbs twisted, faces melted together, mouths gasping for air as they reached for you, fingers sinking into your chest, tearing through muscle and bone. The car rolled away at 4:30, leaving tire marks that glistened red in the dawn's faint light. I checked the lot later, blood thick and fresh, pooled where it had parked, soaking into the gravel like it was drinking it. As the sky grayed, Rule 22 came. Don't leave until the sun is fully up. I waited, watching the horizon, the station creaking like it was laughing at me. The rules, the customers, the road, they were all linked, a web spun from Jack's stories and older things that made the desert their home long before the highway was paved. I saw his face again in my mind, half torn, grinning from that mirror, his blood mixing with mine in this cursed place. I'm back for the 5th shift, the final one if the road lets me go. The rules are tightening, the horrors sharpening, each one carving deeper into me. The station knows me now. My fear, my blood, my name. Part 5 waits, and I know it'll be the worst yet. The customer's less human, the rules a noose pulling tight. I can still hear the singing, smell the burning glass, see the car with no driver. Route 66 doesn't just take your shift. It takes your soul piece by bloody piece. The desert night was a void, swallowing last chance gas whole. The neon sign was dead now, its red glow gone, leaving only a skeletal frame that creaked in the wind. My 5th night shift on Route 66 felt like the end of a sentence I'd been writing in blood since I started. The rules in my pocket were tattered, ink smudged from sweat, but they burned against my thigh, a reminder of the leash this place had on me. The handprint on the counter was alive, its fingers twitching when I wasn't looking, and the air was thick with rot, blood, and something sharper, like fear distilled into a scent. Jack's stories, those half-whispered warnings from a man who vanished into this road, were no longer just tales. They were my reality, and I knew tonight would be the final test, the one that decided if I'd walk away or become another ghost in the station's walls. Rule 23. If the floor shakes, lie flat and hold your breath until it stops. At 12:10 a.m., the tiles shuddered beneath my feet, a low rumble like something massive shifting underground. I dropped to the floor, pressing my cheek to the cold, sticky linoleum, and held my breath. The shaking grew, dust falling from the ceiling, and a sound came with it, a deep guttural moan, like the earth itself was screaming. I saw flashes unbidden of what might be below, a writhing mass of flesh, limbs tangled, faces fused, mouths gasping as they clawed upward, their nails splitting, blood seeping through the cracks in the foundation. Jack's posts mentioned tremors but not the visions, bodies buried beneath the station, skin rotting off in chunks, eyes rolling in sockets as they chewed their own tongues. The shaking stopped after a minute, but my chest burned, and when I stood, the floor was warm like it had been breathing too. At 1 a.m., Rule 24. If a customer leaves a tip, burn it before they leave the lot. A man came in, his face a patchwork of scars, eyes yellowed and bloodshot. He bought a soda, tossed a crumpled bill on the counter, and left a small bone as a tip. Human, maybe a finger, still wet with blood, marrow glistening at the broken end. I grabbed the lighter, hands shaking, and set it ablaze as he limped to his truck. The bone didn't burn right. It sizzled, spitting black smoke that smelled of charred flesh, and screamed faintly, a high wail like a baby in pain. He turned grinning, his teeth stained red, and drove off. Jack had warned about gifts that carried curses, but not how they'd writhe in the flame, how the smoke would form shapes, hands, faces, mouths open in agony, clawing at the air before dissolving. By 2 a.m., the station was a cage, the walls pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Rule 25. If you see your own shadow move without you, cut it off with a knife and bury it outside. I was restocking chips when I noticed my shadow on the wall, stretching too long. Its head tilted at an angle I wasn't mimicking. It twitched, fingers curling, and I grabbed the utility knife from the drawer, heart pounding. I slashed at the air where it met the wall, and the shadow screamed, a sound that tore through my skull, like nails on bone. Black liquid oozed from the cut, thick and warm, pooling on the floor, smelling of rot and iron. I scooped it into a bag, ran outside, and buried it in the gravel lot, the ground sucking it down like a thirsty mouth. Jack's stories mentioned shadows that betrayed you, but not how they bled, how they whispered your name as they sank into the dirt, promising to return. At 3 a.m., Rule 26. If the radio plays a song you know, smash it. The old AM/FM crackled to life, spitting out a pop song I'd heard 100 times as a kid. My stomach twisted. I knew what came next. I grabbed a hammer from the back and swung, shattering the radio into plastic shards and sparking wires. But the song kept playing, faint, coming from the walls now, the lyrics twisting into something else. We'll take your eyes, your tongue, your skin, peel it back, let us in. I saw it, my body pinned to the floor, hands tearing at my face, ripping skin in strips, blood pooling as they carved me open, laughing. Jack hadn't mentioned this, but I felt him in it, his fear woven into the station's hunger. I covered my ears, but the song lingered, looping in my head until it faded at 3:45. The final rule, 27, came at 4 a.m. If the station goes dark, don't light a match. The lights died without warning, plunging me into blackness so thick it felt solid. I froze, the air cold and heavy, like I was underwater. Something moved in the dark. A shuffle, then a wet drag, like a body being pulled across the floor. Whispers started, close, brushing my ears. Join us, they said, like Jack did. I saw him in my mind, his final moments, surrounded by shadows, their claws sinking into his chest, tearing through muscle, ripping his heart out as he screamed, blood spraying, soaking the tiles where I stood now. I kept my hands still, fighting the urge to light a match, knowing it would show them to me. Faces without eyes, mouths stretched wide, teeth dripping with gore. The dark lasted until 4:30, when the lights flickered back on. The station was empty, but the floor was wet, smeared with red, and the handprint on the counter was gone, replaced by a single word scratched into the wood. Mine. I didn't touch it, didn't breathe, just waited for dawn. As the sky lightened, Rule 22 from last night held, don't leave until the sun is fully up. I stood by the door, watching the horizon, the station creaking behind me, like it was reluctant to let me go. The customers, the rules, the horrors, they were all part of Route 66, a road that didn't just run through the desert, but through time, through blood, through stories like Jack's. I saw his end clearer now. Not just killed, but claimed. His body broken, his soul woven into the station's walls, feeding it, keeping it alive for the next fool. The sun rose, and I stepped outside, legs weak, the air clean for the first time in days. But I felt it. The road, watching, waiting. I'm free for now, but the rules are in my head. The visions burned into my eyes, flesh torn, bones snapped, blood pooling in shapes that whispered my name. Jack's stories didn't save him, and they won't save me if I come back. Route 66 doesn't let go. It's in my blood now, its hunger a pulse I can't shake. If there's another shift, another station, I'll be there, bound to the dark, to the things that come when the world sleeps. And they'll be waiting, teeth sharp, ready to carve me into their next story. That's all for today. Hope you can still sleep tonight. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for next story.